What's going on, you guys? Nick here, coming at you with another video. And today I want to talk about 3 tips that'll help you get into cloud security. Let's go ahead and talk about it. If this is the first time you and I are meeting, hey, my name is Nicholas Moy. I am a VP of Application Security for a fintech company, financial technology company based here in the United States. I actually come from a cloud security background. So I used to work at a Big Four firm where I led the service delivery for cloud security solutions for public sector clients. It's like the federal government, state and local government, and stuff like that. So been doing cloud security for quite a while. I've been in cybersecurity, IT for over a decade now. So well versed in all different types of security engineering, security operations, network security, application security now, and cloud security. So I've been doing this for a little bit. And one of the things that I get asked all the time is, how do I get into cloud security? In my last video, which I'll post a link up here, but in my last video, I talked about how application security and cloud security are going to be the 2 most desired skill sets for cyber going into 2021, and how you as a practitioner should be learning these skills. However, it's difficult to learn them. And reason being is because there's not a whole lot of great information online that talks about how to navigate all the different sources of information, which a lot of them are outdated, in order to learn and become a professional in cloud security or application security. So that's why we're going to be talking about this today is, how did I become a cloud security engineer, and really how can you do the same and become a professional in the industry? So we're going to go ahead and talk about that. So my first tip for anyone that wants to go into cloud security is to understand the core security principles that are out there. And a great way to do this is by pursuing a cybersecurity certification, maybe reading a few books that are filled with the principles that typically are being tested in like a Security Plus or an SSCP or something like that, because these security principles are going to help you as an engineer or as an architect be the first thing that you think of whenever you're trying to secure an environment. And this doesn't just apply for cloud security, it applies for enterprise security, it applies to security operations. What it is it's training you as a person to think with the mindset of a security engineer. How do you protect the data? How do you protect the people? What are you ultimately most concerned about? And that's always going to be securing the organization, but also meeting the organization's needs. So it's this perfect balance of performance and security. Security is never to say this is a no, absolutely, until you meet their compliance and goals and objectives. No, not necessarily. Usually there is a balance and there's an acceptable risk tolerance that can be met, where we can allow certain things to fly if it's being signed by the right stakeholders, the business owners. But then there are times when we have to say no. We aren't going to leave patient records in an unencrypted storage box up in the cloud that's open to the public internet. That's not going to be okay. However, can we store those patient records in a storage solution in the cloud that is encrypted but is also open to the public internet? Yeah, we can do that, as long as it meets certain things like regulatory factors, and does this meet the business objectives? Are we monitoring this thing for access control? What are we doing here for compensating security controls? These are all different factors that we have to think about as security engineers when thinking about how to protect an ecosystem in the cloud. So the first tip I would say is to understand the principles of security, that defense in depth, separation of duties, due diligence, due care. Those things, those are very fundamental principles that we learn early on in our education as cybersecurity professionals, and they very much apply to the cloud. When I'm given a cloud environment and I'm being asked, hey, Nick, how do I secure this solution? Here's the diagram. Here's what we're going to be building. I have to say to myself, okay, what kind of data is this? Is this sensitive data? Okay, it's sensitive. All right. So what regulatory bodies are we going against here? Do we have any rules, requirements we have to meet in order to abide and make sure that we do not get fined as an organization, that we don't get in any trouble or any lawsuits or anything like that? And if there is, then that makes it usually pretty easy, because there's usually a checklist, like with FedRAMP or with GDPR. We have some guidance there on how we need to navigate designing secure solutions. And then I can go to the enterprise architect or the cloud architect, and I can say, hey, I see you did this, it looks good, but I think we need to make a few tweaks here, maybe add some encryption. This standard says we need to use AES 256. We're going to go ahead and apply that there. This regulatory body saying we need to monitor for access control, or we need to restrict it so that only certain people have access to that. Can you provide some type of documentation or artifact, was what some places like to call it? Can you provide me that documentation that says that you are doing that? You can't. That's okay. Let's go ahead and work together to figure that out. As a cloud security architect, these are the types of questions and comments, that the commentary that we're having, the dialogue that we're having between me as the security engineer or the architect and the other individuals who are on the team designing this cloud solution. So that's the first thing I would say, is make sure you understand the security principles so that you can play that role and have that dialogue with other individuals who are going to be more concerned about cloud performance. That brings me to point number 2. Understand the cloud ecosystem that you are going to be playing in. When I started out in cloud security, I chose AWS because in the organization that I was working at the time, we didn't use any other cloud environment. We solely built applications in AWS. We did really cool, innovative things like Alexa, skills apps for different organizations like Nestle and tons of gas stations, like large Fortune 500 companies that you would hear about in the United States. We did a lot of work for them. We also built serverless applications, and we built, innovative digital medication applications so I was having to deal with GDPR. I was having to deal with HIPAA. When I was doing an application for the Wawa company, I had to deal with PCI. And so understanding all these different compliance regulations and how they work in the cloud and AWS forced me to not only know my security knowledge and the skills that I had there, but also to understand the AWS security services and the architectural services. Like, what is a VPC? How does a VPC work? How do I build it out, and how do I protect it and modify it? EC2 instances. These are basically virtual machines in the cloud. How does it work? How do I protect it? What can you do with it? What are the different options as far as deploying one of those out? Storage solutions like S3 buckets and EFS and EVS. Like, I had to understand, how do these different components work, so that when I have an application architect or an enterprise architect come to me and say, hey, this is the solution, we're planning on building this out, we need you to perform a threat model, or we need you to perform a risk assessment on this architecture and tell us if this is secure, and if not, what do we need to do to make some changes. So step 2 would be to understand the cloud ecosystem and the services to a reasonable sense. You don't have to be an expert in it. There's always going to be Google. You can always read the documentation and ask questions to the people that are on the team that are experts in building these things out. It's never to be expected that the cloud security engineer is an expert in cybersecurity and cloud architecture. You don't need to be an expert in both. You need to be an expert in security to the point where you feel comfortable enough designing and making recommendations on how to secure cloud services. That doesn't mean you need to be an expert in cloud services, but you need to know them well enough to ask the right questions and to find the right answers. So that would be point number 2. And for the third tip, I'd probably say that you want to understand the governance and regulatory bodies that you're up against. If you are designing a solution for HIPAA, make sure you review the documentation, the requirements that they have for you as far as designing a solution in the cloud. If it's PCI, make sure you're following it. Make sure you classify, the application or the infrastructure that you're going to be using and that it follows the classification guidelines for PCI and for FedRAMP and whatever regulatory body you're going to be designing the solution within. So I can say from experience that when you are working in these ecosystems that do require you follow a governing body, you need to look at the requirements and make sure that the cloud solution that you're building out and the applications follow the rules so that you don't get in any trouble. That would probably be number 3. And I think in that little tidbit, little expert knowledge nugget, take it if you will, when you are designing a solution that follows a regulatory governance body, one tidbit to note is that the natural environment of the cloud is that you usually can leverage services at a cheaper cost because the cloud vendor like AWS or Azure, they buy large quantities of hard drives and compute resources like CPU and RAM and all that because they're sharing it across multiple organizations, multiple projects. And what I mean by that is, the server blades, right? One server blade could have hundreds of servers, virtual servers within the server blade. Sometimes thousands, probably, depending on how powerful it is and how big each virtual server, the instance itself, is going to be. The one thing to keep in mind is that sometimes when security incidents take place, the law has to get involved. They have to take, the blade and they have to run it through digital forensics, and that poses a problem. Maybe organization A, they had the incident, and I happen to share my data on that same blade. Now, AWS is going to say, oh, that's no problem. We'll just give you a new blade and your organization, your application will continue running as normal. But the thing is that I need to be concerned about as a security engineer, as a cloud security engineer, is that yes, maybe I'm okay, I can access my data, that's good, that's all fine and dandy. However, this digital forensics team, this the law that's being enforced on the blade that was taken, they have my organization's data too. They may not be interested in it. They're probably just interested in the instance, the ecosystem where the incident took place. But remember, this server blade could manage 100, maybe 1,000 different virtual instances, virtual servers within this physical server blade. So that means that all the instances, all the data that's being held on that physical server blade is also going through the digital forensic process. And if I hold something that's highly confidential, like let's say it's, federal secrets, like let's say it's like army secrets or some type of military intelligence, and it happened to be stored on a shared server blade, that's not good. I don't want even a digital forensics law enforcement person. They don't have the clearance to see that. They should not have, they should not be able to see that. Maybe they do have a top secret clearance, but they certainly don't have the need to know in order to read that, which means I, the cloud security architect or the engineer, did a bad job at designing a solution and making sure that I followed the necessary governing body. And in this case, because I'm working in, the military or the Department of Defense or whatever, I am going to have to follow FedRAMP. And FedRAMP's going to tell me if you are dealing with top secret confidential information, you need to have a dedicated server, meaning that if an incident took place, I would literally own the entire server blade. There would not be 100 other companies using the same server blade in their own virtual instances. No. I literally own the entire thing, which makes it extremely expensive. Now we're not looking at this cost-benefit analysis of whether or not it's cheaper for me to use the cloud versus me purchasing my own blade on premise. No, I just bought the blade. I'm literally working with a dedicated instance. This is my hardware for the lease, 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is. This is mine and I have to be responsible for it. So that's something I would have to forewarn you that, being in the cloud and operating in the cloud, you have to be holistically mindful of the solutions that you're designing in these ecosystems, and make sure you understand security principles, the cloud services and how they work, not to, expert level. Like if you're a cloud security expert, you don't need to understand machine learning all the time unless that's the environment you're playing in. You just need to understand which services are they using as a team that you're working, as part of, and be able to provide that subject matter expertise to that team. And then you need to understand the rules and regulations that are going to be governing the projects that you plan to be working in. Those are my quick tips for you. If you found this helpful, please leave a comment down below. If you have questions, I want to hear them. Please also comment and let me know what they are. I'm going to be making a lot more content like this to help you guys, but I don't know what you don't know. So, being that I've been working in this space, it's super, super helpful if you can interact with me and tell me, what do you want to know? Are you interested in a particular cloud service, or, maybe some principles on application security? Tell me what you want to know. Happy to share my knowledge and help you, and also learn from you. So I hope this was beneficial. Anyways, that's it for today. I will see you guys in the next video.